I'd like to reverse the usual order of things and start with a brief discussion of our court's substantive work, and then turn to some thank yous, and then finally to recognition of my friend and former colleague, Robert Luck. I think it's fair to say that in the world of Florida's legal profession, the aspect of the court's work that's of greatest interest these days is our ongoing effort to reform, and I know that there are some who would contest that word choice, but to reform the rules that govern the progress and resolution of civil cases. In a nutshell, the thrust of the changes is to require active judicial case management from the very outset of a case, to impose meaningful deadlines and require adherence to those deadlines, and to make the discovery process more fair. There are 3 points about this that I'd like to make. First, I want to address why we're making these changes, because I can understand why some might think, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Things are good. We're proud of our judiciary, our system. So why try to make these changes? And for us, the bottom line is that we think that the new rules will give better effect to the promise of the civil justice system, which after all is to quote the rules, secure the just, speedy, and inexpensive determination of every action. And here, while we're mindful of the perspective of judges and lawyers, our principal focus is on clients, the litigants themselves, the people whose duties and rights are at issue, and who ultimately bear the burden of protracted litigation. Our goal is to minimize what one judge has labeled process exploitation, which can cause civil litigation to be unreasonably slow and which can make the process itself a form of punishment. Second, we on the court are mindful that we've asked trial judges and attorneys to make significant changes to long-standing ways of doing things. We acknowledge that change of this kind can be demanding and unsettling, especially in the short term. And we know that no system or set of rules, including our own, is perfect. This is a work in progress, and we will be studying things closely so that we can continue to address anything that needs addressing, including any unintended consequences of our work. We welcome communication and feedback from the judges and lawyers in the trenches, and our commitment to you is to listen, to be open-minded, and to always be open to correcting anything that needs to be corrected. And finally, we understand that the efficacy of the new rules will depend in part on whether our trial courts have the resources they need to be successful. And that includes additional judges, more case managers, and better case management technology, among other things. In the upcoming legislative session and beyond, our court will do its best to obtain those resources, understanding that the legislature will have to balance the needs of our branch with those of the myriad other entities that serve the public and compete for limited taxpayer resources. And I say that sincerely, not just to cover myself with Jennifer Kennedy, who's here, and I appreciate it. Okay, so now on to some thank yous. First, again, thank you to Fred, thank you to Mark Miller, and all of the team at the Historical Society. This dinner is fantastic, but they constantly are helping the court. As Fred mentioned, we have, Jamie Grosshans has been doing all the hard work, and her team, which consists of Paul Fleming, her JA, Kit Spilker, our librarian, Teresa Farley, and our new archivist, Jackie Attaway. But it's been a big priority of ours to try to make sure that people who visit the court have a great experience and learn as much as possible about the court, and that our branch and our court and our building are all presented in the best possible and most informative light. And so I want to thank everything that you've done to help us make those improvements, and we're continuing to do that. And I know that Jamie's just going to keep doing the amazing things that she's been doing. Also, I want to recognize Eric Robinson, who's here. He recently retired after many years of serving as the archivist of the court. And, all of us here care about the legacy of the court and the history of the court, and he's done as much as anyone on our team to keep that going. And we really appreciate, Eric, all your years of service to the court. So thank you. I also want to thank Professor Earhart. It's a huge honor for me to be part of a ceremony that's honoring someone who's such a titan of the legal landscape here in Florida. And even, I think that's amazing in and of itself, but also who's someone who's just so beloved in our community. He's obviously a very decent and kind and good person, and everybody who interacts with him knows that. And it's a real honor to be with you tonight, sir. And finally, I want to thank Professor Randy Barnett for being here. Justice Grosshans, I'm sure, will give you more of an introduction. Obviously, they're going to have a great conversation, but she'll fill in some of the details. But I just want to say I'm really excited that you're here. I can't wait to hear your conversation. I'm especially grateful for the things you've been doing the last few years on the judicial education front. The substance has been fantastic, and also just giving us an opportunity to meet other judges from around the country, both state and federal judges, and so I really want to thank you on behalf of our court for that. And thanks, Jamie, for agreeing to do this interview. Justice Coriel did such a great job last year with Attorney General Gonzalez that we thought we'd keep this format going, and I know that you're going to enjoy it. Okay, so finally, the last thing I want to talk about, one of the great things that the Historical Society does, in addition to preserving just the overall history of the court, is that they're very helpful to us individually and our court experience. Last year, right after the dinner, we had the investiture for Justice Sasso, which was excellent. The Historical Society was very helpful with that. I know it was a very meaningful event for Justice Sasso personally and for her family. And so thank you to all of you, the Historical Society, and all of you who support it for helping to make that happen. And the other way, and this is the final thing, is with our portraits. This brings me to my dear friend, former colleague and Miami native, Robert Luck, who has served as a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit since November 2019, and whose portrait was completed in this past year. Now, I know that everyone here is an avid student of Florida Supreme Court history, and so I don't need to remind anyone in this audience that Robert's tenure, glorious as it was on the Florida Supreme Court, lasted for 309 days. But we're rule followers, and the rule is that everyone gets a portrait. In all seriousness, though, Robert is an extraordinary person and judge, and I take comfort knowing that the honor he brings to our court includes not just his time with us here, but also his service as a trial and appellate judge before that, and his continued excellent service on the 11th Circuit. Even though we served together for less than a year, that was enough for Robert and me to develop a deep and enduring friendship. He left a lasting positive impression on all of us who served with him. In my case, Robert taught me a great deal about what judicial excellence looks like on a day-to-day basis, especially the hard work, the analytical rigor, and the importance of collegiality. He also introduced me to Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I now have become obsessed with, and I talk about it so much that my clerks last year gave me a life-size cutout of Larry David, which I display in my office. And I'm not the only one who looks up to Robert. Throughout our state, he's renowned for his work ethic, his intense preparation, his writing ability, his intelligence, his broad knowledge of the law, and his false modesty. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I don't want to overdo it. I mean, Robert is a great man, but sometimes you can go overboard with this stuff. I want to close with being serious. Robert's most meaningful contribution to the judiciary, and it's a continuing one, is that he gives every ounce of his formidable intellect and energy to following through on the judicial philosophy that many of us espouse. That philosophy calls for judges faithfully and disinterestedly to apply neutral principles using the traditional tools of the judicial craft without regard for the judge's subjectively preferred outcome. This is a philosophy that can only be persuasive and attractive to the people if they have confidence that judges are really doing it. Robert does. He practices what he preaches, and I can say that not just from watching him and watching his work, but also through the countless conversations that we've had where he, fervently believes this, and to the core of his being, he does everything he can to try to live up to what he espouses as his philosophy. And I think that that's what makes Robert such a great judge and ultimately such a great patriot and servant of the Constitution. I know that he'll continue to make all of us in the Supreme Court family proud for many decades to come. And now I'd like to call upon Robert and his beautiful wife, Jen, to come up and unveil the portrait.